Hello and welcome back to another weapon tutorial for Monster Hunter Wilds. I think I'm going to call these the Wilds Weapon Workshop. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. So today we're going to be going over the switch axe, going over the basics, combos, and possibly some advanced stuff later on. So what is the switch axe? The switch axe is a weapon that can switch between two different modes. You have the axe mode here, and you have your sword mode. While in the sword mode, you move slower, but you deal heavier damage. While in axe mode, you can move around a lot quicker, and it is mainly just for getting up your switch gauge in order to activate sword mode. Your switch gauge is the yellow bar directly below your sharpness bar. As you'll notice, there are 3 different sections to that bar. As you attack in axe mode, that bar will increase. Once you switch over to sword mode and you start using your attacks in sword mode, it will start decreasing that switch meter. In order to increase it back again, continue attacking with the axe mode. There are a couple of basic attacks with the axe mode. If you just do your main attack, you can do an infinite combo of overhead slash, side slash, and a spiral burst slash. This is by far the fastest way to actually increase your switch gauge. If you press circle over and over again, you'll do a wild swing. This can be done indefinitely until you run out of stamina, or if you press triangle for an overhead slam, you'll activate power axe mode. As you can see by the meter there, it is now glowing red. Power axe mode will increase your damage and increase the amount of the switch gauge that you increase while attacking. You can also follow up wild sweep by pressing your morph button in order to do a morphing sweep attack. The other way to activate power axe mode is through offset attacks. So let's talk about that now. So the axe mode has an offset attack that if you press triangle and circle at the same time, you'll do an offset rising slash. As long as this makes contact with the attack at the same time, you'll perform an offset attack. Once this happens, you actually have a couple of different options. If you have no inputs, as you can see, you'll do absolutely nothing. However, if we press triangle, we'll do a follow-up heavy slam. It does a nice hit and activates your power axe mode. The other option for the offset attack is that if you press the right trigger, you'll switch over to sword mode and get a nice hit in. So let's talk about sword mode now. So while you're in sword mode, this is where you're going to have your highest damaging attacks. You have a couple of your basic combos. If you just press triangle over and over and over again, you'll do some minor hits. This is a very suboptimal way to build up your amp gauge, which is the red bar to the right-hand side of the weapon gauge. The more optimal way is if you press circle over and over again, or B, you'll do a double slash and a heavenwards flurry. As you can see, that increased it quite a bit. Once it's glowing red like this, as well as your actual weapon, you're in what's called the amped state. Once this is active, you have a couple of different options, and some of your attacks have increased effectiveness and or changed entirely. The way to activate the parry on the sword mode is if you press R2 and triangle or right trigger and Y at the same time as an attack meets you. You follow up with some nice hits. Once you're in the amp state, you have a few different options. For one, you have your zero-sum discharge. If you hold the element discharge buttons, triangle and circle at the same time, and make contact with the monster, you'll actually latch onto the monster. As long as you spam triangle over and over and over again, you'll end in a large explosion, dealing some high damage. Now, while you are latched on, you have hyper armor, meaning you cannot be knocked off, but you can still take damage from the monster. If you stop pressing the button part of the way through, the explosion will be reduced and you won't be sent flying backwards. You can do a regular element discharge by pressing triangle and circle at the same time. This doesn't need an amp state, but it will have an increased damage. You can continue to press triangle or Y right afterwards for a large attack like that. You can also follow up an elemental discharge if you hold down right trigger or R2. You can either perform a full release slash, which is one of the heaviest hitting attacks for the switch axe, or you can press R2 and not hold it down for an unbridled slash, which is a shorter version of the full release slash. You can also go directly into a full release slash by holding down R2 and pressing triangle and circle at the same time. All 3 buttons need to be pressed at the same time, but make sure to hold down R2. And you can direct this with the focus mode. You can also do an unbridled slash if you just press R2 triangle and circle at the same time. Again, it's a shorter version of the full release slash. When it comes to the focus strike, there are a couple different things you can do. If you're in axe mode and you just do your focus strike, if you don't do anything at all, you'll end in a large power axe finisher, which will activate the power axe mode, increasing your axe damage and quickly filling up your meter. If you activate your focus strike while in sword mode, you will stay there and end it with a very quick elemental discharge. You can follow this up with one of 2 attacks. You press R2 for an unbridled slash, or if you hold it down as long as your amp state is active, you can finish it up with the full release slash, which is a nice quick hit while the monster's still reeling from the focus strike. While performing the focus strike with the switch axe, you can press R2 to switch back and forth between the 2 different modes. So, if you're starting in one, you can always switch to the other. Now let's talk actual combos in sword mode. Using the zero-sum discharge to actually latch onto the monster would be good whenever you have a very quick-moving monster, or when you don't have a whole lot of opening for long animation times, especially with the full release slash. However, if you have enough time, what you can do is if you do your full release slash, you can immediately follow that up. If you continue attacking, switch over, and go right back into another full release slash. Again, keep attacking, build the gauge back up, and so long as your amp state lasts, you can get multiple full release slashes off in very rapid succession. With the Power Prolonger skill, this scales incredibly well. Another great skill to have for the switch axe would be Rapid Morph. Not only does it speed up the process of which you actually morph your weapon, but it increases the damage. Here's a comparison, with and without. Appreciate everyone for watching my video. If you learned anything, please let me know. If I've forgotten anything, again, please let me know. Open to suggestions. Have a wonderful day.